I grow 12 different witch hazels. This is Aurora. And if we could do smelly vision, this one smells of freesias. Although it's a butterscotch colour, it smells of freesias, and it's just as scented as the acrid yellow pallida. I love these polypodies, and John Massey, I was at his garden the other day, and he's got snowdrops coming up through his. And the great late Christopher Lloyd used to grow Dryopteris, which are cut back at Christmas time. And then the snowdrops come up round the brown knuckles, and then the fiddle-neck croziers come out in April with the bluebells and hide the snowdrop foliage.
Hello and welcome to episode 79 of Talking Dirty, over at East Ruston Old Vicarage, bedecked in diamonds. Not the sparkly ones, only on his jumper. We have Alan Edward Herbert Gray, our happy and very handsome horticulturalist.
Well, hello and welcome everybody. And dare I say it, you look a bit like a peacock today. Over in Cambridgeshire, we have Thordis Maria Sophia Fredriksson.
It's all of the colourful flowers on my shirt. I'm embracing spring, as are our guests.
Peacocky though. There's that sort of, you know, the lozenge on the feather. There's that colour in it. Yeah.
All the peacock colours. Well, I'm happy with that description. And I say our guests are embracing spring because their garden is just a treasure trove of spring-like wonders, as I'm sure is your nursery. The wonderful Helen, Picton and Ross Barbour of Old Court Nurseries and the Picton Garden. Welcome to Talking Dirty.
Dressed for winter.
Yeah, you're bundled up.
We're sitting in the potting shed going, this was a bad idea to be in the potting shed today.
Before we get stuck into talking about all of your wonderful plants and all your wonderful history, do you have any middle names to share?
I'm the only one with a middle name, I think, so it's very boring. But I'm Victoria, and I was named not after the Queen, but after the giant water lily, which...
That is brilliant. It's not that often that people have planty origins behind their names on this podcast, even on this podcast. But I suppose it makes sense, considering your heritage.
Yeah, well, they were thinking about petunia, so I was quite glad when it went for Victoria. I think that was a better option.
I'm sure most people listening or watching might know, but we have got lots of viewers and listeners all over the world who might not have been to your garden or be aware of the history, but you've got this wonderful horticultural heritage stretching back.
Yes, so I'm really lucky. I'm third generation. Ross is the one that's come and joined us, so he's bringing his own horticultural heritage with him.
Horticultural baggage.
Yeah, horticultural baggage. We're a fairly small operation, so we're only, 2.5 acres all told. And an acre and a half of that is garden, but working garden. So we produce everything for the nursery here. But our background's in Michaelmas daisies, but Ross and I have really developed a great passion for all the spring plants as well. So that's what we've been working on for the last decade now, isn't it? Yeah.
And Ross, you say you brought your horticultural baggage. What is your background?
I left school on YTS doing horticulture and just sort of went into big houses and big gardens, and was the last thing I did before I came over here was a head gardener at a place called Ragley Hall in Warwickshire. I was over there for about 16 years until I met Helen and got spirited over here.
Isn't Ragley Hall a hell farm?
It's still private at the moment, I think.
All right.
Marquis and Marchioness of Hertfordshire.
Oh, know them well.
So you got lured over to the Picton Garden and to the nursery then, Ross?
Yeah, we were doing a big project in the old rose garden, so I wanted to make it a bit more contemporary, and we were going to put some Michaelmas daisies in it to extend the season. So of course got speaking to the experts and got to know Helen, and slowly developed a friendship, and just seemed to spend more and more time over here until it was permanent.
There's no escape now.
Not now we're married, no.
No going back.
The Michaelmas daisy thing, I mean, that is, I suppose, what you guys are best known for.
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's how the nursery was established. So it was started in 1906 by a gentleman called Ernest Ballard. And he was really the first commercial breeder and raiser of Michaelmas daisies. And it never really looked back after that. It's had brief changes when Michaelmas daisies weren't fashionable, obviously, but in essence, it's what's always been done. And my parents really redeveloped the collection in the 80s, and then we've taken it on and are now hopefully looking after it.
So obviously you've been working on the spring plants, of which, I mean, your snowdrop collection is absolutely heavenly. And anyone who follows this podcast, I mean, we have been getting quite into snowdrops over the past years. And we kind of, each podcast, we did a snowdrop special last year, but we don't want to necessarily only talk about snowdrops, but it is hard to resist.
It is very hard. We found the same going around today because we were thinking, oh, well, it's kind of towards the end of snowdrop season now. We don't want to do too much. And we still ended up picking a couple of snowdrops to bring in. It was like, they're just looking so good.
Oh, which ones were still looking good?
So on the whole, the little Nivalis are the ones that are still looking really good. So I hope that comes up okay. But so that's Prague Spring. And it's got that beautiful sort of fluorescence on the outside, and it pinches in those outers. And then really lovely green inner marking as well. And it's only, well, as you can see, it's only tiny. It's a little teeny fellow, but it's just gorgeous. And the Nivalis are definitely some of the latest. But we did also find that's still looking really good at the moment is Veronica Cross, which is a lovely, I mean, it's still an inverted POC, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So, and of that sort, I think there's something very special when they open up their skirts and start to dance. I think that's the real joy with them, isn't it? Yeah. Some of our favourites. We got a bit obsessed by green marked snowdrops at the moment. It's like, oh, add another one.
Who isn't? I mean, who isn't? I think they're absolutely charming. I haven't got Veronica Cross. I think I've got about 200 varieties now. But I don't have Veronica Cross, so that's gone on my wish list, thanks to you.
There we go, see, we're helping.
Yeah, this podcast has a lot to answer for a lot of people. Which ones have you been adding then? Are there any that you got hold of sort of this season or last season that have flowered for the first time in your garden?
Some older ones. We kind of like to go back in time. The beauty of snowdrops for us is the connections. So they're named, or a lot of the older ones are named for people and places, and you can start linking them all together through those people in those places, which we really enjoy understanding and learning about. So it's nice to go back and pick up some of the older ones, like one we picked up this year was it Lord Lieutenant? With a lovely inner mark. And I think is that connected to Goldsbourne?
I think so, but Ransom's Dwarf, that was a new one this year as well, which is lovely. We did actually have it before, didn't we? And might have killed it, as happens.
Well, that's the thing with snowdrops. What we seem to find with all the people we talk to is just certain ones do better in certain situations. So you can desperately long after a particular one, but it might just not like your soil, your situation.
Yeah, we've got into the habit now of any new ones we have, we pot them up or keep them in their pots for the first year. And they do quite well like that. And then you can move them on into the garden in the summertime, especially if we bought them in the green.
I think with you guys, what's wonderful is that whole combination of planting, the inspiration you give for not only the snowdrops but what to go with them, and there's a lot of beautiful things certainly in your garden to go alongside them. So what have you brought along to show us?
Well, we couldn't resist temptation, but I suppose some of the earliest flowering or longest flowering, so that have really been overlapping with the snowdrops. I know it doesn't, I've been trying to warm it up, but it hasn't gone very well. But so it's, I know you're looking at thinking, yeah, it's an anemone blanda, which of course it is, but it's Ingramii, and it's a collected form of it. And it usually with us starts flowering sort of November time, and then goes on right the way through the winter, and then picks up properly beginning of February, doesn't it? And you get a mass of flowers, and it's still producing new buds now. Prefers it when it's a little sunnier.
Yeah.
Having words with it about that.
But we've got it planted with some Galanthus sandersii, so that yellow of those just sets both of them off. And when the sun comes out and all those blue flowers open, it's just stunning.
Oh, what a combination. I love that is testifying to how chilly you are in your potting shed as well. I am not
flowers won't open. But the other thing we love using with the snowdrops is crocuses. And obviously lots and lots. The Crocus tommasinianus is amazing. And once it starts self-seeding, I'm sure you grow it and know, and it's such a joy. But we have a few other rather nice ones around. and he is firmly closed up, but I hope that shows up
You see the
that
tip.
beautiful marking on it. So that's Crocus heuffelianus, Silvery Wonder. We've got a few different varieties now in the garden, but they are lovely. That bigger flower than the tommasinianus, and then you get that lovely, very typical marking just below the tip of the flower on all of them, and they really stand out. So they come a little bit after the first of the zebra eyes and things like that, and then you get the hoofs coming on, and yeah, a bit more refined than your vernus. Not that there's anything wrong with vernus, but
but it's always about finding the extra special.
Definitely. Well, Shockwave, which is another heuffelianus, was on our wish list for a long time, wasn't it?
Mhm.
We did eventually manage to get a bulb, and we're carefully looking after it now.
It's doing quite well, actually.
Yeah.
It's bulking up well. I see it around a lot.
I also love heuffelianus just for their name.
Mm,
It's always fun to have a plant that's got a fun name to say.
yeah, I agree. It always sort of reminds me of Galanthus Heffalump as well. I think that's
Yeah, me too. I was just thinking of that.
Oh well, great minds.
Yeah, exactly. I think Heffalump was just a big fella, wasn't he? I mean, he was Primrose Warburg's husband.
That's
And
right.
she was the doyenne of Galanthophilia, really, I suppose. And if you got on the list, I never did, of course, but if you got on the list, I think I was perhaps a little bit too young. But I think if you got on her list to go and have a snowdrop lunch, you did not say no. And there are one or two people doing things like that today still. I think John Morley, who lives in Suffolk, he's a great galanthophile and has an enormous collection of snowdrops. And we have a morning in John's garden every year in February, just to gaze in wonder at all these wonderful things. And I have to say, I went this year, and I told you earlier, I've got probably over 200 different varieties of snowdrop, and I fell in love with another one. And this one happened to be Treasure Island. I don't know whether you know it, but Treasure Island.
Well, we're spinning back round to Veronica, because Veronica used to do the lunches as well before she.
And that's where Treasure Island came from.
A couple of years ago, and that's where Treasure Island came from. Yeah. But
We were lucky enough to go to a few of the lunches before we sadly lost her, and we remember seeing Treasure Island before it was named, and it's a cracking snowdrop.
Yeah. It stands out, doesn't it? That's a rather fascinating tale about Veronica, wasn't it? Because she named that particular snowdrop Treasure Island because that's where she used to put all her treasured snowdrops on the island in the pond or the lake or whatever it was.
It's an island.
Yeah. So they are protected.
There's Long John Silver, Pieces of 8, all come from the island.
As does Wasp, I think.
Yes,
Certainly.
I think Wasp. Yeah.
I do like Wasp. I can't possibly claim to be a galanthophile, so I started my collection this year, but I like one that I can clearly identify. So Wasp is great for easy identification.
No, I agree. I think it's, although once you get started, you kind of get led down all sorts of streets, but it's nice to be able to look at them from a good sort of 2 feet back and be like, yeah, I know which one that one is.
There'll be a lot of people look at snowdrops and people who really enthuse about them and think you're absolutely bonkers. But talking about Primrose Warburg's husband, who was known as Heff, he was into mosses and even had a moss named after him. So if you think snowdrops are insane to study, what about mosses? That's absolutely bonkers.
Well, Ross, you know what the saying is, there's someone for everybody on this world. Yeah.
The other good thing with distinctive snowdrops is then you can kind of potentially detect parentage in seedlings. And I'm sure with the amount you must get some amazing seedlings.
It takes a long time before the seedlings start coming through. And our collection's only about 10 years old here. So only now are things starting to appear, and not that exciting either. I think we've probably missed the boat on having the chance to name anything special because there's so much coming through now, but they're starting to pop up, and we enjoy the snowdrops just for being snowdrops. We've a lot of clumps that came from people that we don't know what are. We'll probably never know what they are, but they're super plants and they just look fantastic, and we appreciate them just for that.
I think it's a great thing actually naming snowdrops after the person that gave them to you, because several years ago now, Vanessa Scott, who was part of a radio program that I did, she brought me in a clump of snowdrops, and I immediately divided them when I got home, and I put them in the garden, and they made a lovely patch. But I don't know what they are. They're quite special, quite nice, and people look at them because they're slightly different. I think they're probably slightly bigger. And I just called it Nestles because Ness and Les, her husband, you see. So it's Galanthus Nestles. And they come up and they were quite confused and said, where did you get that? What is it? And I mean, it's just a personal thing for me.
I think a lot of plants arrive in gardens and they end up with a label just from the person who it's come from historically. And sometimes those plants start going around with that name.
Named after people or the place or the name of the garden, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a nice thing when you get more into gardening because, when I first started, I had no idea. First of all, I didn't know who most of the gardening people were. And then I had no idea if it was a particularly famous garden. And then you sort of get to know and then you understand so much more about what the plants' names mean.
And it can draw you to a plant as well. We've got another galanthophile, Amy Doncaster. We've got a shrub named for her, Mrs Amy Doncaster, if Helen can find it. It's ribes, is it laurifolium?
Yeah.
Laurifolium. And it's a bit more of a scrambling beast. And it likes to sort of trail a bit, but this is a super thing in the garden at the moment. It's been flowering for weeks.
The great thing about that is it fulfills so many people's dreams, being sort of lemony, limey green. I mean, that green flower, I've got that I'm not going to say I've got it now because I did have it with lime green hellebores underneath it, and they look stunning together. But I think that may be a piece of garden that's got rather neglected, so I don't know whether it's still there. But I definitely have Amy Doncaster, and the great thing about Amy Doncaster is the fact that shrub will grow in a north-facing position, so it will grow in shade.
Yeah,
and it is beautiful as well. We can almost relive your combination. Hey! Like we planned it.
Just hold those two up together again because so people could see how well. Yeah, you see, it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, super
good.
Is our green hellebore any particular one? It's absolutely stunning.
No, it was the first plant I ever gave Ross as a present, and it came, of course, from John Masters from Ashwoods.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have a name in particular. But it's one of our favourites, isn't it?
Yeah, it bulks up really well. It's sterile as well.
Yeah, so you get the length of flowering.
We've a lot in the garden, but we only picked a couple to bring to show, and that was one of them.
What other hellebores did you get, or other hellebore?
The only other one we picked today from a fairly recent breeding programme, actually, but it's called Pink Frost. I don't know if you've come across it.
I haven't, no.
Quite short. I mean, that's the full length of the stem. And it's one of these ones that likes to look up at you rather than hanging its head. Really good foliage, so it's got a little bit of marbling in the foliage, but nice dark, I think that comes through those lovely dark pink stems. And then the flowers often start very early, sort of late January, February time. It's a little bit later this year, but it's a nice plant. I think I don't know, you can get quite dismissive about some of the more recent breeding with hellebores, and particularly if they're coming out of microcrop and everybody gets a bit snooty about it, but I think there's some cracking ones coming on, and Pink Frost definitely.
I think the thing with hellebores is that they get pushed by gardening journalists, don't they? And that you mentioned fashions in plants and things, and I mean hellebores are just so fashionable, and if you can get slightly different colours, it is marvellous. I particularly like some of the yellows that are on John's website at Ashwood Nurseries. And I was very lucky a few years ago because there was an old gentleman who lived just on the outskirts of Norwich, and he bred hellebores, and I can't remember who he bred them for, but he bred them for a company. Anyway, long story short, he gave up his position just outside Norwich and he moved somewhere like Hampshire, I think. And before he moved, he gave me a call and he said, look, I can't take all these hellebores with me. Some I need to keep, but they're in 3-litre pots, deep pots. Would you like to come and help yourself? £2 a pot.
Wow. Who could turn that offer down?
I'm just a guy that can't say no. Well, and I went and I did have some, and I've got some extraordinary shapes and colours, really. Most of them are singles, but they are egg yolk yellow with a red middle.
With the red, that combination is really nice.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've kept them separately. I can't scientifically go and breed them because it's not in my nature to do so. But they are in a separate place, and I'm just hoping that they're going to produce some seedlings.
Yeah.
Very exciting. That's another nice thing about hellebores, though, isn't it? Once you've got a few, you do start to get seedlings popping up.
Yeah. Unless they're sterile, like your double green, of course.
Yeah, in which case, unfortunately, no.
My great triumph at the weekend, I just popped to a local nursery and was sort of perusing the hellebores. I really want some yellow ones, and I don't know why, but they unless you go to Ashwood or somewhere like that, they don't seem to be particularly readily available in sort of smaller nurseries and garden centres. So I was sort of just looking around and found 2 in one pot. So that was my triumph this weekend. A nice pink speckled one and a white speckled one, 2 little plants. So
I think there's something in what you just said, Thunder, because I think it's marvellous, isn't it? Because however busy we are, we always find just enough time to pop to a nursery.
Well, it is a priority, We like to encourage this idea.
Yeah, well, I've been watching Ross take us on a tour of your garden, in actual fact, on Instagram, and I have to say it's very much like my garden in the fact that, or the spring area is and you keep mentioning a lovely little pink violet, and over the past few years have been sort of championing violets, and I've got all the shades from the deepest purple right through to white, and I have to say that they are the most wonderful plant for carpeting a woodland area. Yeah. Because naturally they'll throw out all these little runners and they root as they go and all the rest of it. The only trouble with me and my violets is the muntjacs eat the leaves and they just leave the stalks. So we've got a sea of stalks standing up, no leaves on them. The flowers are there.
That is not nice. No. We're lucky that we don't. Well, apart from once, we don't get muntjac in the garden, so we're all right. And yeah, as you say, the violets at the moment are looking fabulous.
Yeah.
And I mean, we tried for a while getting some nice named varieties, didn't we? But to be honest, we rather muddled them up, and we just go with the nice effect of all the different shades now. That'll do.
You're a woman after my own heart, Helen, because I did exactly the same. I named them all properly and all the rest of it, but the names get weeded out and things. And I mean, and I really got to the stage where I thought, well, I really can't be bothered with all that because the flowers are here and that's what we want more than anything. I thought it was interesting. I read at the weekend that I think it was a Rothschild woman. She had violet lawns. She lived in the south of France and grew Parma violets, but they had. Can you imagine a violet lawn? I mean, the waft of perfume from those lawns must have been spectacular. But I wonder how many gardeners she had. I can tell you, actually, that she had 105.
Well, if only we could all have violet lawns then, couldn't we?
So, I mean, I'd go for a violet lawn if you like, but I think I'll stick to violet patches.
Yeah,
I think that sounds very sensible. Way forward.
Well, they work so well in creating that tapestry in the spring garden. You've got
a
patch of that, and
3
or 4 patches of that, and then start infilling that with crocuses and cyclamen and iris and things like that.
They're especially good underneath bulbs, aren't they? Because they weave, and there's that green. You haven't got just bare soil, you've got that lovely green underneath.
You've got to get rid of the bare soil. There's nothing worse, and it's not good for the flowers of the bulbs either, because you get that splashback.
Now you sound like Vita Sackville West, because that's what she said. if you see bare soil can see weed seeds coming down. I mean, we plant closely now. I think I always have done. But I remember going to Sissinghurst about 3 years ago, and what did I see? Bare soil. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, well, this is not what Vita had in mind when she gave the garden to the National Trust, perhaps. There we are.
And you're right about the splashback as well. I mean, anything you can do to stop that.
Yeah.
We had a friend who's a photographer, and he came in and he was bitterly complaining that he had to spend hours photoshopping out mud splash off snowdrops. Like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it must be the real bane of any galanthophile life, because I've been watching some of Jimmy Blake's little tours around his snowdrop collection, and it's this one, it looked nice before the rain. But yeah, Ross is right. You've been doing some lovely tours on Instagram. If people aren't following the Picton Garden on Instagram, it's well worth it if you can't get to the garden, to go and get a little bit of a look round.
Yeah, you try and give people a taster, don't you, of what's out and what's looking nice.
Have a little bit of inspiration now and again and do something. Yeah, it's fun. It's nice to share.
It's nice to share, and it's also nice for you because it makes you look at your garden probably with a keener eye. I think that I always find that it works for me when I go off to take photographs of the podcast. It makes me look at things in a different way, probably.
Yeah, it's amazing how you suddenly notice something that you thought was all right, and then you think, oh, actually, I could really do with just a bit of something else there, or change that, or tweaks. It makes all the difference to a garden, I think.
Yeah.
The detail, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely detail. What
have you got next for show and tell? I'm loving these wonderful plants you've brought along.
Well, I was busy sitting here trying to warm it up, but I don't think it's... So we might do a different one. So what I have brought is some of my favourites is irises. So obviously you think of your big bearded irises and whatever for the summer, but the winter flowering iris can be absolutely gorgeous.
I love the look on Ross's face when you reached for it, just this anticipation.
The straight Iris anglicularis, or stylosa as it used to be, which is a charmer. But our big excitement this week, after 3 years of waiting,
and the slugs didn't eat it,
was Peloponnese Snow came out today. Oh, yesterday actually, I suppose it was, wasn't it? I was so excited. I'll bring that.
Well, I find, I mean, you'll probably find this out. This is the first year it's flowered, but I find that Peloponnese Snow produces more flowers than the mauve anglicularis, like Mary Barnard and all the others.
Well, we've got Alba and we've got Walter Butt as well, which do really well. And we've got this new one.
So this isn't one that was quite new to us. Well, very new. And it was one selected. Yeah, it's in a pot. It was selected by Bob Brown. It's called Diana Clare, and it's meant to be a lot more floriferous than.
I think that's named after Mrs. Brown, is it not?
It is, yeah. That's right. So it better be good, hasn't it?
But our Penelope Snow took a while to settle in, and then the mole decided it didn't like it where it was, so it moved it along the garden a little bit. So it's had a wee bit of time to settle in, but now it's got 2-3 more buds coming on it. So with a bit of luck,
there's something in what you say, Ross, because I've noticed that I grow Iris lassica, the dark form of Iris lassica.
You've got some of that too.
Well, here it is.
Lassica.
Well, I've got one form in my woodland garden that's so much more floriferous than the other 3 clumps I've got in another area of the garden. And I've actually got that on my list this week to move the whole lot over to the woodland garden, because if they like it there, let them grow there.
Yeah. Is it a different form, or is it just in a happy place?
I think it's just in a happy place, because where else it's growing, the soil is a bit more compacted probably, and it's not as woodsy.
Yeah.
And it's not as leaf. Probably not enough air in it or something.
It's interesting though, because I was always brought up with the idea that the Iris anglicularis needed to be right out, open, sunny position, preferably at the bottom of a wall somewhere.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't have anything like this in the nursery. And I was like, oh well, that's a plant I'm not going to be able to grow then. But it was visiting Ragley, and Ross had big plantings of it under the mature oak trees. And they did fabulously, didn't they? Every year, masses of flowers, looking really, and I was like, ooh, let's give it a go.
I'm always saying this. Plants can't read books. So what you're told in books, try something different. I mean, you don't have to sort of give your best place at the bottom of a wall. I mean, Ross has proved, because he grew these irises under an oak tree. So let's experiment.
Yeah.
I think so. Was it Bowles who said you should always buy 3 plants? Plant one where you want it to grow, one where the book says it should grow, and one where it's definitely not going to grow. And one of those will probably do all right.
I love that. I think, as I learned so much on this podcast, it's one of the nice things. I think when you start with gardening, you probably just read the book or put it where you can put it, where you've got a tiny gap left. And I think as you evolve, you then learn so much, like move things around, keep finding places until they're happy. And that's what happens as you become a bit more experienced. I've got a long way to go, but it's nice to realize
we all do.
Move things, find their happy place, experiment. I'm not sure I'm quite at the stage of buying 3 in my tiny garden, but one day.
That might be excessive, but
I'm not sure. It sounds like the dream, to be honest.
It's never excessive. I'm sorry, it's never excessive. I mean, personally, I would rather have 3 of one plant than 1 of 3 plants.
But you've got 32 acres, Alan.
And deep pockets, I know.
Does make a difference.
Have you managed to warm your plant up? I can see you.
Yeah, Unfortunately, it turns out something ate one of the petals, but couldn't tell what it was closed up.
Spring is definitely here. The celandines are out.
Yeah. This is a plant that many people will curse widely, but of course, less a celandine. This one is copper knob, which sounds a bit rude, but anyway, it's
talking dirty, Helen.
I know, sorry. Like Brazen Hussy, but with that vibrant orange. It's a fab plant. That's another rabbit hole I got led astray. Lesser celandines. The only trouble is you've got to remember not to weed them out.
Well, I must say it's a very well polished copper knob. Love it.
I mean, it is just this wonderful beacon, isn't it? You hold it up and it just lights everything up.
I always love with the celandines as well. You get the sort of, I don't know if it shows up very well, but you get like the dark background on it, back on the petals. So when it's closed, it looks sort of almost burnished, and then you get this amazing colour as it opens up. And
razzle dazzle,
bit of joy.
One of my favourites has got the dubious name of double mud.
Yes.
It's slightly later flowering than probably copper knob is, but double mud is well, it looks a bit mucky, really, doesn't it?
I finally got hold of Crimson Damson last year, and that's a fab double form again, but with those beautiful dark outers to the petals, and then you get this it's lovely. But that is a green leaved form as well, so you look at it and you think, is that definitely the right one?
Yeah, are you a keeper or a goer? I know.
Magnum's another good one. It's dark foliage, but with a big, large, pale vanilla flower. Yeah.
I always think of the ice cream Magnum when it comes to talking about that celandine. Chocolate leaves, ice cream centre.
Yes.
That sounds delicious. There will be people who just can't get on board with the celandines, I suppose, but we can.
I think there probably are, but I think they're missing out.
You miss so much because it's that early part of the year. Now, if you take your heritage, Helen, from Ballard, Picton, Michaelmas daisies, that's the other end of the year. But I mean, there is so much of I think because thanks to climate change, that our gardening year has become so much more interesting, because you were talking about that little anemone that intermittently flowers before Christmas, if you're lucky, but really comes into its own in the spring. And there's so many flowers that are doing that today. I mean, I couldn't believe it, but I walked into the Californian border in my garden yesterday, and there's a diorama just poking a little bit of flower out. And I mean, what's not to like, but it's the wrong time.
I think we're back to plants not reading books again as well.
I think we are.
Calendar.
Yeah, I saw that diorama on your Instagram, and I was going to comment that it would go well with my hebe and my scabious, which are flowering.
Same here. I mean, things like the Nautiers are all poking flowers up, and you're thinking, well, what are you doing?
But we can enjoy them regardless.
Yeah.
Now, Ross, I saw you reach over for some of the show and tell.
Well, I was thinking of continuing the theme of weeds. So I got the Arum. It's not a lot of people would probably like in their garden, but it can be quite
love them.
There's Arum Italicum, which got really nice markings on it. Yeah. And these are starting to become a bit of a passion for some people as well. We've got a few in the garden, but one I did pick to have a look at was this one. It says Monksilver, and that's a lovely pale form with these lovely big huge leaves that create this lovely clump in the garden.
It's quite a large growing one too, which is lovely.
But you're right, Arums. I mean, Alan's had people get quite annoyed at him recommending Arums.
Well, I think they did a rotating Ross thing, I think.
not advisable. Thanks for sharing that.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, audio. We're close. We can't hear you. Get better at sign language. Hello. Oh, can you hear us? Can we hear you? Don't you just love the start of this? Oh.
No.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
just like to make a quiet observation. Did you notice that during that little furore, the men didn't speak?
Leave it to the communicators, Alan. Right then. Are you okay, Alan?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Thought I'd check. Being remarkably quiet. You're not normally this quiet.
I'm just making a few notes, that's all. Is that a good sign or a bad one?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm worried now.